Hello, everyone, and welcome to my channel, Heidi's Corner, with me, Heidi. As per usual, my lovely co-host, Stefan, and there we go. And as you can see on the screen, I have a guest, Mr.42. Uh,
Hello.
could you tell a little bit about yourself to my viewers for those who do not know?
Of course. Well, first for the people who do know, I'm your favorite Mr.42. And for the people who don't know, hello, I'm Mr.42. I'm also a YouTube creator where I mostly debunk flat Earth and anti-vaccine, anti-COVID people and other stupidities.
All right, excellent. So, as the name or the title of this episode suggests, it's about the queer history of the Netherlands. Uh, I have already discussed the disgusting Utrecht sodomy trials of 1730 to 1731. Uh, this was during the time of Enlightenment. Um, However, during this time of Enlightenment, the attitudes and legislations didn't always become more enlightened, even regardless of what they are now. Uh, so the Utrecht sodomy trials were a result of a chain of events of changing legislation back then, uh, and then hundreds of gay men were hunted down and mobbed and rounded up at the church and executed there. Towards the end of the 1700s, 1791 was it that the Napoleonic code came into effect in the Netherlands, and uh, and then eventually the French criminal code was put into effect in the Netherlands, or the Dutch Republic that it was at the time, and hence homosexuality or sodomy, which was had already been decriminalized in the French penal code, was then decriminalized in the Netherlands. This starts a new era or in the Dutch queer history. Back then, everyone obviously had to be in the closet and hide who they really are, at least a common folk. Unlike the royalty, like the James the First of Scotland, James the Sixth of England, who was quite publicly in homosexual relations with three different men. Now we are now coming at it. Then eventually, when the Netherlands or the Dutch Republic was then uh, detached from the French Empire, it became homosexuality then became again illegal. Getting Now, this is the brief history up until the late 1800s. When we get to the 20th century, um, in 1911, Christian political parties enacted a Article 248 bis. Uh, can it could Do you have a bit more insight into that? What Because this Article 248 bis was in effect for quite a few decades. Is there any talk of it in the modern day Netherlands, or? is it mentioned even in schools at the time you went to school?
No, the first time I heard about this was while researching for this video.
Okay. What is there? Is there any my Dutch isn't strong enough to go very deep into that.
Hmm.
So could you elaborate a bit what that might have implicated in the lives of average queer people in early
Okay.
1900s?
And you mean the Article 248 bis specifically, right?
Yes.
Okay. What that meant was the age of consent for homosexuality was raised to 21, where the age of consent for heterosexuality remained at 16. So that had quite an impact for the younger people. And that is especially in an age where people are trying to discover themselves, because so that has quite an impact on individuals. Which still meant at that point that those people were not seen as equals.
How am I not surprised? How is it that the at this point this would have been on the Christian-based political parties in the 18th, because back in the 18th century, not just was homosexuality or sodomy uh, um, an issue, was it was also different. For example, masturbation was also brutally under attack, and I would assume it still is in certain parts of the world. So how did they still in the 1900s attack but this Christian based people? Did they attack masturbation and homosexuality in the same bunch?
Yeah, I think they call it, especially for women, lesbianism and hermaphroditism. Um, that was also a bit earlier, not even in only the 18th and 19th century, but we talk about 17th century even. That was seen as the same thing, although the punishments for women and for men were different.
Yes,
That
of
is
course,
also
because
that I also found very interesting.
there is all there's always the bias, uh, certain bias, um, when gay and bisexual men, well, men having sex with other men were more harshly treated than women having sex with other women.
Yeah.
Again, there is the issue of that I've been ranting about on my channel on several occasions, not even very recently, um, that there's the issue of when there's the public discussion whether or not trans people should be allowed to compete in the categories consistent with their um, gender identity and their reassigned gender. Uh, Trans men are actually I discussed this a couple of weeks ago on a live stream before my holiday, that about the first and second episode about Laurel Hubbard. Laurel Hubbard is that the International Olympic Committee consensus is that transgender men once once fully transitioned are allowed to compete without any restriction, none whatsoever, in the Olympics and everywhere without restriction. But trans women, oh my god, they they it's all about trans women and feminines, and in this case, it's also always about men who have sex with men. Always, if women have sex with women, that's okay, fine. go do it. But this is something I'd love to rant about, the entire evening here.
Yeah, I
But
hear
that
it.
is not the purpose here. But it's just curious.
Absolutely.
Uh, okay.
Although there are exceptions in history where also women having sex with women were prosecuted.
Yes. But for example, uh, when in 2000s, well into 2000s, I think it was 2017, when when England and Wales, I don't think it was the entire UK at once. At least England and Wales, when they passed the Alan Turing law, they pardoned 50,000 gay men wrongfully convicted of sodomy and in gross indecency, including Oscar Wilde and Alan Turing. And Alan Turing received a royal pardon, not just a pardon, but a royal pardon from Her Majesty herself. And this same Her Majesty's justice system convicted. She was the queen at the time, or at least the I think his father had just passed, and she was already the regnant when Alan Turing was, I think she had already might have been already crowned. Her own justice system uh, unjustly eventually sentenced Alan Turing of a crime that she personally pardoned him of half a century later. It's just infuriating that things like this happen. Excuse me. So uh, it's um it's then uh, in early 1900s there was this Dutch chapter of a German humanitarian committee called called Nederlands Wetenschappelijk Humanitair Committee in,
Yes,
sorry for butchering that one, but
that's
uh,
fine. That would translate to Dutch Scientific Humanitarian Committee.
yes. And previously, uh, when first looking into things, there was um, iamsterdam.com actually fails to mention the first gay bars that were uh, founded a few decades earlier, actually.
Yeah, that surprised me as well. On I Amsterdam, they say the first bar was opened in 1927. Further investigation found that the first was mentioned in 1911 already.
The
No,
Empire.
sorry, that was the best known.
Mhm.
But they also talk about gay bars, multiple plural. So that is a
Yes.
discrepancy on the website, probably.
And Cafet Mind, yeah, was the uh, that was mentioned in I Amsterdam initially. That
Yeah.
when looking into this meant,
What is true about that statement, Café het Mandje, or the basket translated, is the oldest one that still exists. So that is
yeah, yes,
somewhat of a
yes,
fact.
yes, the only oldest one that exists. Yes, correct. Um, it then obviously this NWHK was during the war. It, all kinds of shit went down in the Netherlands, and it was shut down based on the paragraph 175 of the German Criminal Code. We, but fortunately, that was later revived. revived in from after the war. Um, it was then removed from the Dutch criminal code eventually. Uh, was it? It was almost in very soon after the war had ended, wasn't it? That the paragraph 175 was removed.
I do not know exactly when it was removed, but I can only imagine that they did it very fast for every law on the German occupation, that they just removed everything.
Yeah,
I can imagine, but I do not have that as a fact currently because I did not anticipate this question.
yeah. Well, our viewers can find that out. I'm sure. I'm sure my viewers will fact check every single thing I ever say on my
Yeah,
channel. Um,
it was removed from the German criminal code in 1994. That
yeah,
is something I can answer.
I'm sure it was removed from the Dutch criminal code decades earlier.
I'm sure indeed.
So the as the post-war climate and post World War II was uh, concentrating on, rebuilding the world, so and re-establishing society, family first, etc., etc. Of course, and I mentioned, and I've gone through the American anti or the anti sodomy laws that were tightened in the 60s and 50s and led up to the Stonewall riots in the in starting from that started or was sparked by a police raid and and started by the most oppressed group of people in that demographic, which would have been trans sex worker sex workers who were trans women of color. They started the riots during a police raid in the early hours of the morning of June 28th, 1969, and that is uh, how we got our current modern day pride events. And remember, people, pride is a riot. So, but be kind. Um, anyway, the there was some progression, but however, it seems as if the the liberal mindset of the 20s and 30s that started to get forward was then taken backwards after the war, because from 40 after the war onwards, it was treated more harshly, and psychiatry, and it was still an illness, but the Dutch clergy and uh, clergy and psychiatrists started to see it as a bit of a minor crime, and it was then um, resulted in liberal more liberal legislation and legalizing, abortion and pornography, prostitution in 1983. So it was quite early, I think, this sort of progression that happens from the starting from 60s in the
Yeah,
Netherlands.
step by step.
Yeah, step by step, but quite early on
That's
compared to
true,
many other
absolutely.
countries.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's absolutely true.
it's for example, well, for example, in the Republic of Ireland, divorce became legal in 1997. So there you go. Uh, from from then, of course, the gay bars started flourishing in Amsterdam as well, and probably elsewhere in the Netherlands. Would it be fair to say? Uh, was there a boom in the sexual revolution, and after that, when things started to loosen up, was there a surge of gay bars and gay parties and events and stuff?
Well, what certainly happened is that there was a clustering of events. So people could more be open about their sexuality and
Yeah,
could actually meet in public. So it was more visible. Um, yeah, there's certainly not a change in the amount of uh, people with such feelings, of course, because that is
yes,
throughout the ages has always remained very equal, I
yeah,
assume. But now it was allowed to be open, and that is a big
yes,
change in their way of living, of course.
yeah, and they couldn't throw you into just you're gay, go to jail, that's it, end of story. And actually, I found that I just looked into this a bit. Where was it? Yes, the Article 248 bis was repealed in 1971. So it would have been like 60 years
Yeah,
in the going, but still horrendous. That such,
yeah.
thinking
But
now.
what often happens in the Netherlands, you see it also with the what somewhat legalization of marijuana as example. I think it, at least for the recent past, I know it's for sure. It is still illegal, but it is I don't
Decriminalized.
know exactly where they don't prosecute people with that substance. So even when something is officially a law, it is not always enforced, and that might have been the case for this as well.
Most likely, yes. And what happens in the Netherlands always tends to happen very soon in Belgium, your lovely neighbor. Um, once weed becomes legal, it's in a year or two. It's in Belgium. Same-sex marriage, few years in Belgium. Once the Dutch monarch abdicates, the same in Belgium within a few years. It's curious that you have such a affectionate terms with your neighbors.
Yeah,
Um,
they take over our good ideas.
yeah,
That's perfectly fine.
perfectly fine. Uh, yes, and the first uh, gay memorial was set up in 1987, which is a good year because I was born then. Which is in Amsterdam, in central Amsterdam, and commemorating those gay men and women who were prosecuted and treated harshly due to being uh, homosexual. Uh, so how would this have been the now that we go already to the 80s,
Yes,
and we in the 80s we saw the surge of AIDS. The It was the beginning of the era of AIDS. Um, what what kind of um, issues did that possibly cause in the gay community and in the Netherlands in general? Because, uh, for example, Kaposi sarcoma is one of those illnesses that comes with uh, AIDS. It was called gay cancer because it was a telltale sign of, if nothing else, you got Kaposi sarcoma, you've got AIDS, because it requires a substantially compromised or practically zero immune system.
Mhm.
So it was called the gay cancer.
Yeah.
So how would that era have been affected the Netherlands in general, and did that cause some kind of a gay panic?
Well, it caused basically a panic under the gay community in the first place, because it was worldwide known and labeled in the beginning as a gay disease, like you just mentioned. So and in that time, gays were still looked at, not as 100% normal people. So they were very afraid to come out, first of all, of their sexuality, but also if it happened that they caught the HIV or AIDS, to make that known to their family and friends or workplace, even, of course, because then they would all know that they are homosexuals, which was still frowned upon by the general population. That changed because HIV is in time no longer only a homosexual disease, because we learned more about it. And it did lead to better sex education in schools, and uh, in general. So that is something positive that came out of it, I think.
Right. So something good came out of something absolutely horrible.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah, which is it's unfortunate. It's so very unfortunate that something bad horrible needs to happen before change the needed changes come, because it was long overdue.
Yeah.
Uh, those the not AIDS, but the positive changes that came uh, as an after effect. Those positive changes that came as an after effect became it. It's too. It's horrible to think that something so as horrible as HIV and AIDS had to come first before people could talk about proper contraception. Because I think it's one thing is to blame the poor sex ed, that that if you don't know who that if it to avoid risky sex behavior, contraception and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, so say now we come to the 2000s. In 2001, the Netherlands granted the legal recognition to same-sex marriage.
Yeah.
Uh,
Although there is one event before the same-sex marriage that is still very significant,
yes.
that happened 3 years earlier, where the Dutch parliament granted the same-sex couple domestic partnership benefits.
Uh-huh.
That is on paper equal to a marriage without a marriage, but it
Oh.
was still an important step towards the same-sex marriage. But it happened a few years earlier.
Uh-huh. And as I understand it, the Netherlands were the first country to do so.
Yeah,
From the Utrecht sodomy trials uh, to Article 248 bis to what was it? The articles
5.
Article 175. Sorry, paragraph 175, to being the first country in the world to do the what was perhaps thought to be unthinkable, and at one time, and to grant same-sex marriage. In It's kind of, it makes you feel warm and fuzzy inside to know that there was such a long way to, even though it took almost 300, like 280 years since
Mhm.
Utrecht,
Yeah.
same-sex marriage. So there is still, unfortunately, even in the Netherlands, opposition, shall we say, to gay marriage. There are certain overseas territories like Aruba and the Dutch Antilles who still refuse to obey the Netherlands proper equality acts. So, uh, are there any reason as to why the Aruba and the Netherlands Antilles have never really been too keen on obeying the Dutch law, especially
Um,
in this regard?
well, it's not only in this regard, but you must not forget that those areas are a few thousand kilometers away. They have a whole different way of living, even while falling under the Dutch law, and they have a totally different culture. So what we decide to be a law is sometimes they're received as, "Hey, what is this?" Um, yeah, and they are also old colonies of the Netherlands.
Yes.
They chose to be in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but not for 100% of the population, of course, that agree with that. Um, yeah, I think that a combination of all those facts that they regularly reject or oppose certain laws,
Yeah. Okay.
especially on these kinds of topics.
Would there be any with regards to the background, because there's, as I said, they're quite far away from the main to the Netherlands proper.
Mhm.
Would there be any sort of cultural reasons as to, because it's Aruba is in they're both in the Caribbean Sea. Would there be
Yeah.
any perhaps religious or cultural reasons as to why this would be the case?
I actually don't know about the religious reasons because I don't know what is general religion there. But culturally, yes, that's absolutely one of the big factors.
And then there's of course in the Netherlands proper, uh, there's certain religious parties, the Christian parties, which I understand take another take up about 5%, and there's a Christen Unie
Yeah.
also in the Netherlands, and
Yeah,
so
they still oppose every proposition in the second chamber, our political system,
yeah,
that they oppose if it's against their version of their view of the Bible.
yeah, their view of the Bible, yeah, there's uh, at least a few dozen, at least 2 dozen different Bible translations. So
Yes.
to English alone, to English alone, English
Yeah,
translation, like I think there's at least 2 dozen, 2 dozen,
absolutely, at least. Yeah.
and
For Christian Unie, as example, I know they're still opposing to women in their own political party, as an example.
yeah, and
That
then
is,
of course there's the um, of course then there's the Catholic Church who then even hate the use of condoms, etc., etc., and they
mhm.
still use the a Latin translation of the Bible this from the six from 600s. So it's not the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation, but the later Latin translation they
Okay,
use
yeah.
still, and they refuse to use anything else except for maybe the Anglosphere uses King James, but And the it was when it comes to the mentioned church, Pope Benedict XVI was of the opinion that that uh, condoms could be used only in like gay male prostitution as the option for the two lesser evils, and it caused an uproar, and then the 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 Holy See had to send out statements and corrections that no, the Pope meant this, not this, not what he said, but he didn't mean what he said, but he meant this. And then Pope Francis went on to say something along the same lines, and then again, no, he didn't mean what he said, he meant this. So on
Amazing how
his
the
it
yeah,
was their statements were on their
yeah,
trips to Africa when questioned about the raging HIV epidemic in Africa. They were asked, "What do you think of condoms in this way, used in this way?" And eventually, Pope Francis got his way through, and it's okay now to use condoms in Africa if you're a prostitute, just to avoid HIV, not as contraception, not to prevent you getting pregnant, but only to prevent HIV.
yeah.
How do you do one without the other?
Yeah, it's a bit off topic, but it always amazes me how the perfect book that is called the Bible is open for interpretation.
Exactly.
That is kind of a contradiction.
It's a gigantic contradiction, but there is, and then the gigantic internal inconsistencies.
Absolutely.
Like Genesis 1 and 2, which one is it? Is it Lilith and Adam at the same time from clay, or Adam from dust and Eve from his rib? So
Doesn't matter, just pick one.
yeah, I think one explanation I found was that that Genesis 1 is just a poetic version of the latter.
Okay.
Yeah, so poetic and more artistic version of Genesis 2. Yeah, but that has nothing to do with the topic at hand. And then,
Exactly.
um, so, but one more thing that I actually I forgot to say is that in 2007 the Dutch uh, Supreme Court declared that all the marriages contracted in different parts of the Kingdom of Netherlands should be accepted in other parts of the kingdom as well, forcing Aruba to recognize same-sex marriage. This would,
Yes, but this is only part of the solution.
yeah, yeah, they won't marry gay couples, but they just have to accept that those exist, and
Exactly.
they have to acknowledge the legality of those in. And the European Union poll showed that the Dutch are strongest supporters of same-sex marriage with 82%. It's quite a significant number, I think.
Yeah, that absolutely is very significant. Uh, what what I just noticed here from the article, homosexuals are allowed to have relations between consenting adults in private. That is even legal. It's not just accepted by legal. But most of the island territories, they are conservative Roman Catholic Church
Uh-huh.
members. And as a result, many Italians and Arubans do not support the LGBT rights.
Well,
In
well,
this
the Yeah, I
Direct
mean,
contradiction with mainland
yeah,
Netherlands.
it's curious that this stuff like that still exists in a country that is even remotely legally connected to a country in the European Union, and less alone the Netherlands. Uh, it and it because even Northern Ireland did eventually uh, come in terms with reality and accepted the fact that they should legalize same-sex marriage, which is nice.
That is nice indeed.
Anyway, um, before we go rambling to the entire evening and too far, uh, I think it's time for us to go for tonight. Would you have any closing arguments, comments, etc., etc.?
Well, I hope that people are a bit more aware of the Netherlands and what they have done for the LGBT rights in the world. And I hope many countries in the world will follow some of their examples that they set. But I also hope that Netherlands will look at other countries for things that they can still improve to make it even better than it is right now, because it's not perfect yet.
Well, nothing is perfect, is it?
That
No.
is true. But we can work towards perfection without ever reaching it to have something to strive for.
Yes. Yeah. So, this was the history with Heidi about the Dutch queer history. Um, by by the time this comes up, it's only 1 week until the first episode of live shows on my channel after my break on a summer vacation. And in the summer vacation with me is Bertil. We will be taking him and his friend Mordan with us to our vacation, and they will get to go to the Moomin world, the one original Moomin world, eventually. Okay, I will have linked Mr.42's channel in the description box of this video. There are other links there as well. There are the links to my playlists, season 1, season 2, Monday News, Friday Facts, History with Heidi, Special Files, and one episode of Sunday Special. And I'll have, as you have already watched, hopefully, quite a number of my queued up videos that will be published while I'm gone. And there are links to my Discord servers, Hades Corner, and LGBT plus safe space. I want to reiterate my challenge, or for those of you who wish to debate me on the position on whether or not transgender people should be allowed to compete in the categories consistent with their reassigned gender. You wish to propose that no, they shouldn't, and I will propose that yes, they should. Please send me an email so we can agree on further details. I have arranged uh, an arrangement with a third-party channel, a neutral channel, for a live show, a moderated, civil, constructive live debate. Please send me an email. And now, please say goodbye to Stefan and to Bertil. Now, and I will see you in the next episode.